The airport speaker was calling last boarding when I pressed the last button that mattered. Freeze card. Ms. Whitman, the account is locked, the bank lady said. No one can use any of the cards now. I stood under the big departure board with my small blue suitcase and watched 3 dots bounce on my phone. Then the messages hit one after another. Mark, Mom? Why aren't our cards working? Claire, they just declined at check-in. Fix it now. Family group chat. They went on a $60,000 family boat cruise without me. They'll be too old to have a clue. I called all the banks from the airport and froze every one of their cards before they use it. Their own words, their own plan had been sitting there in the chat I wasn't supposed to see, right next to the photo of them in matching Alaska or bust shirts. I could almost hear them laughing at the kitchen table last night. She's too old to have a clue. Old, yes. Clueless? No. Final call for Flight 327 to Seattle, the speaker boomed. I slipped my phone into my pocket and stepped toward the gate. And then my phone rang again. Unknown number. Port of Seattle security. I took a breath. If I answered, the whole thing would blow open right now. If I didn't, they'd learn a lesson the hard way. Ma'am? The gate agent smiled. Are you flying with us? I looked at the blinking accept button on my screen and felt my heart kick. I tapped the screen. And everything went black as my phone died. My name is Janet Whitman. I am an 82-year-old blonde grandma, a retired elementary school teacher from Kennebunk, Maine. I still drive my own car. I bake too many pies in fall. And I am not ashamed to say I keep a tidy folder for every account, bill, and receipt in my life. People joke about my files. I call them freedom. I married young, loved long, and buried my husband, Tom, on a rainy November afternoon. After that, I did what many grandmas do. I helped where I could. When Mark and Claire were struggling years ago, I co-signed a card so they could build credit. Later, when things got better, I never took my name off. It felt kind. It felt safe. Maybe it was both. I also kept our family's little travel fund, a savings pot I'd built over decades by tucking away $5 here, 10 there. Not fancy money. Just careful money. It was meant for big family trips we'd take together when the kids were grown. We'd always said Alaska one day. Tom wanted to see glaciers. I wanted to see whales. We pictured standing at a ship railing with hot chocolate, our noses pink from the cold, and our grandkids wrapped up like little burritos. I guess dreams have a way of changing when people do. 2 weeks ago, I got a text that wasn't meant for me. Claire had mixed up chats and sent a message to the wrong thread. It was a photo of a cabin with a balcony and a long string of hearts. $60K, but worth it, she wrote. And we won't have to babysit. She'll be too old to have a clue. I stared at the words for a long time. I read them out loud to the empty kitchen. Then I made tea the way I do when I'm trying to calm my hands. I told myself I'd be the bigger person. I told myself they were excited and careless, not cruel. But that night, when I set my mug in the sink, I saw another alert on my phone. Large purchase pending, Oceanic Voyages. It was my travel fund card. The family card. The one they were still authorized to use because I had trusted them. They didn't invite me. They used me. I didn't sleep much after that. I kept hearing Tom's voice in my head from years ago when a mechanic tried to overcharge me for a new muffler. Janie, he said, when people count you out, count yourself in. So I did what I know how to do. I packed my small blue suitcase. I printed my documents. I called the airlines and booked a last-minute seat to Seattle, where their dream ship stood waiting. If they thought I couldn't understand, I would stand right there on the dock and let them see me understand. At dawn, I drove to Logan Airport with the radio low and the roads still wet from night rain. I walked slow like the old lady they thought I was, but my mind was quick. I sat near a window, opened my folder, and called the banks one by one. Hello, this is Janet Whitman, I told the first one. I'd like to freeze the accounts ending in 1423, 8871, and 0029. I am the primary. Yes, I can verify. Mother's maiden name? Harlow. Address. Yes, I understand. Freeze them all. Are you sure you want to freeze authorized user cards, Ms. Whitman? The woman asked. I'm very sure, I said, and surprised myself with how steady my voice was. I will unfreeze them when my family remembers we are a family. Call after call, click after click, I did the same. I wasn't cruel. I didn't touch their personal accounts. I only froze the cards I held or co-signed, the ones they were counting on to cover the cruise balance and the onboard charges. I left them their own money. I took back my promise until they could be trusted with it. As I worked, the airport hummed around me. Luggage wheels, paper cups, people hugging hello and goodbye. On the far side of the concourse I saw a flash of white, matching t-shirts. I knew those shirts. Claire loves a theme. Mark was pushing a mountain of luggage like a proud ox. Their spouses, Jenna and Luke, were filming a bubbly video with the kids, all toothy smiles and high voices. Alaska, here we come. Jenna sang into her phone. I felt something twist in my chest. Not anger exactly. Not yet. It was more like a hard stone of knowing. They weren't trying to be monsters. They were trying to be shiny. And somehow I was dull in their shiny story. I watched a moment longer. Then I looked down at my phone and pressed the last freeze. Minutes later, all three of their phones pinged in chorus. I saw their faces change from bubbly to blank to tight. I saw Claire paw at her tote, then jab her screen. Mark called someone and waved his arm at the ceiling like the ceiling could fix it. My phone trembled in my hand. Mark, Mom, did you do something? They say the card on file is declined. Claire, we're at the counter. The cruise needs a card for the final balance and onboard charges. They won't let us board without one. This is insane. Fix it. Luke, Janet, this is fraud. I can call the police. Fraud. I laughed out loud, which made the man next to me lift his newspaper. Fraud is when you take what isn't yours. I was taking back what was. I typed, I am at the airport too. And then I erased it. Let them stew? Was that fair? Was it kind? I thought of the words too old to have a clue and felt the stone in my chest heat up like a coal. The unknown number called, Port of Seattle Security, and a text popped in from Oceanic Voyages. Payment method invalid. Please update within 2 hours or reservation may be cancelled. Non-refundable. 2 hours. I pictured them in 2 hours facing that big steel ship with no way to get on. Ma'am. The gate agent smiled again. We're closing the door. I stood and rolled my suitcase forward. As I handed over my boarding pass, my phone buzzed with a video from Claire. The frame was shaky. Her eyes were wet but not from sadness. From fury. Mom, she said, if you don't fix this right now you will never see your grandkids again. Do you hear me? The scanner beeped green. The agent waved me through. I paused on the jetway and looked back down at the phone. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My mind was clear as the winter sky. I recorded a short reply. Claire, I said, I love those kids more than my own breath. I also love myself enough not to pay for a party I was not invited to. Almost hit send. Then a second video appeared, this time from Mark. He was at a kiosk with a speakerphone on, shouting. This is financial abuse. She's elderly. Do something, he was telling a bank representative. A security guard stepped into the frame and said, Sir, please calm down. Behind him the kids' matching shirts were starting to look silly even to them. I swallowed hard, thinking of Tom, of glaciers we never saw, of a railing we never held. Maybe I was being small. Maybe I was being strong. Maybe I was both. Doors closing, the jetway speaker clicked. I lifted my thumb and felt it hover over send, and that's when a voice behind me said low and firm, Ms. Whitman. I turned. A man in a navy blazer held out a badge. Bank security, he said. We need to talk about some accounts, right now. The door to the plane hissed. My family's messages kept flashing. The man's badge gleamed under the jetway light. Do I step onto the plane and let the lesson stand? Or do I step back and face whatever this is? I took one breath that tasted like salt and metal, and chose. Ms. Whitman, the man repeated, his hand steady on the badge, his eyes searching mine. He looked about 40 tall with a clean-shaven face and the kind of shoulders you expect in a uniform. Bank security, he said again, lowering his voice. Please step aside with me. It's urgent. The jetway hissed as the airplane door sealed shut behind the last passenger. The gate agent frowned at me. Ma'am, are you boarding or not? For one split second I thought about running. 82 years old, blonde hair tucked neatly in a bun, rolling a powder blue suitcase like some fugitive grandmother. My heart thumped hard enough to feel in my throat. But running would prove them right, that I was too old, too clueless, too reckless. So I straightened my back and said, all right. But this better be quick. I don't miss flights for nonsense. He gestured me to the side, down a small service corridor. The carpet smelled faintly of bleach and old coffee. My phone kept buzzing in my pocket, but I didn't dare check. My family's panic could wait. Ms. Whitman, the man said once we were alone. He lowered the badge. My name is Ryan Cole. I'm not actually with the bank. I'm with Oceanic Voyages Security. I narrowed my eyes. Then why pretend? Because, he said, leaning closer, your children are screaming fraud at every counter in this airport. They're saying you've compromised their accounts. They're trying to board a $60,000 cruise with no working payment method. If we don't clear this up, the ship will sail without them, and you'll be facing a storm of legal complaints. I felt the coal in my chest flare hot again. Legal complaints. Elderly abuse. Fraud. Funny how quickly children learn to twist words when money's on the line. Tell me something, Mr. Cole, I said. If a mother locks her own front door because her children break in to steal, is that fraud? Or is it good sense? He studied me for a moment, then gave the faintest smile. Depends which side of the door you're standing on. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or bite his head off. Why exactly are you here? I asked. Because, he said, I've seen this before. Families booking cruises with money they don't control. It always blows up. Oceanic doesn't want the PR mess. If your name is on those cards, you are in the driver's seat. But if you keep them frozen, your family is off the ship in 2 hours flat. He paused. What do you want to happen? My mouth went dry. Nobody had asked me that in years. Not Claire. Not Mark. Not even Jenna or Luke. I was always expected to nod along, bake pies, hand over credit when needed, smile for photos at Thanksgiving. But here, in the hum of the service corridor with my suitcase handle digging into my palm, someone finally asked, "What do you want, Janet?" I wanted Tom back. I wanted my children to look at me and see more than a bank account. I wanted to feel the ocean air sting my cheeks, not because I was excluded but because I was there. But most of all, I wanted respect. I want them to know I am not invisible, I whispered. Ryan nodded as if he'd been expecting that. Then maybe, he said carefully, you shouldn't be flying to Seattle at all. My heart stopped. What are you saying? I'm saying, he lowered his voice even more, Oceanic has a policy. If the primary cardholder shows up at embarkation, even without an official booking, we can, under certain circumstances, issue a last-minute stateroom. Families don't usually know this. But you could step aboard. Right next to them. The coal in my chest turned into fire. You mean I could actually board that ship? If you want to, he said. But it means walking straight into the storm. My phone buzzed again. A voicemail from Claire, her voice breaking. Mom, I swear if you don't fix this, you'll regret it. Then another message, this time from Jenna. Think of the kids. They'll be humiliated in front of everyone. Humiliated. That word. As if my humiliation, my exclusion, my erasure meant nothing. Ryan looked at me kindly. It's your call. You can get on your plane, fly home, unfreeze the cards and let them have their trip. Or, you can walk into that cruise terminal in Seattle and change the story. I could see Tom in my mind again, standing by the kitchen window, his voice gentle but firm. Janie, when people count you out, count yourself in. I turned back toward the gate. The plane door was closed. My seat was gone. My choice was made. I'm going to Seattle, I told Ryan. And I'm not going quietly. He smiled faintly. Then let's get you a ticket. Hours later, as the plane wheels screeched onto the Seattle runway, I checked my phone again. Dozens of messages, all furious, all desperate. Mark threatening lawyers. Claire spitting venom. Jenna crying emojis. Luke saying I'd destroyed everything. But one message made me stop cold. It wasn't from any of them. It was from Ethan, my 12-year-old grandson. Grandma, he wrote, they're fighting. Dad says bad words about you. Mom's crying. I don't understand. Did you really stop us from going? Are you mad at me too? I clutched the phone so hard my knuckles went white. I had frozen the cards to teach the parents a lesson. But had I just shattered the children's trust too? As the plane taxied toward the gate, Ryan texted, "Meet me at baggage claim. We'll head straight to the cruise terminal." I slid Ethan's message back into my pocket with tears pricking my eyes. Outside the window, I could see the city skyline glinting in the setting sun, and in the harbor, like a silver giant, the Oceanic Majesty waited. A ship that could carry both revenge and redemption. And I wasn't sure which one I would choose. The baggage carousel spun with a hollow clatter. My blue suitcase slid onto the belt like it had traveled 1,000 times before, but this time it felt heavier. Not because of what was inside, 2 sweaters, a travel folder and a photo of Tom I always carried, but because of what was coming next. Ryan was waiting near the sliding doors, blazer crisp, hands tucked behind his back. He nodded once when he spotted me. Ready. Ready as I'll ever be, I said, though my knees ached and my heart was pounding like I'd just run a marathon. Outside, the air smelled of salt and diesel. The shuttle bus jolted us through the city streets until we curved toward the port. And then I saw it, the oceanic majesty. She was colossal, gleaming in the evening light, windows stacked like towers, decks layered high. The kind of ship Tom and I had once dreamed of standing on together. My throat tightened. For a second I almost forgot about the betrayal, the venomous texts, the too old to have a clue. For a second I was just a girl again, staring wide-eyed at adventure. Ryan must have noticed. She's something, isn't she? She's everything, I whispered. As we neared the terminal, the crowd thickened. Families pulling suitcases, kids squealing, couples holding hands. And there, like a scene in a cruel play, was my family. Mark's voice cut through the noise. This is insane. My mother can't do this. He was red in the face, waving papers at the counter clerk. Claire's cheeks were streaked with tears, but her hands were flying, jabbing at her phone screen. Jenna was pacing, Luke barking into his cell phone. The kids stood to the side, shifting nervously in their bright Alaska or bust shirts. My chest ached. They looked frantic, cornered. And still, not one of them had noticed me. Ms. Whitman, Ryan said, pulling me aside before we were seen. If you walk up now, you'll have the upper hand. But once you do, there's no turning back. They'll come at you with everything, anger, guilt, threats. You sure about this? I looked past him at Ethan, my grandson. His little shoulders slumped as he kicked at the floor, confused and small. His shirt hung crooked, and for the first time he looked ashamed to wear it. I thought of the message he'd sent me. Are you mad at me too? I drew in a breath sharp enough to sting. I'm sure, I said, though my voice cracked. Ryan gave me a firm nod. Then let's make your entrance count. We walked through the sliding glass doors, the echo of my suitcase wheels loud on the polished floor. I didn't hide. I didn't skulk. I walked straight into the middle of the terminal, shoulders square, chin high, Tom's photo tucked under my arm. It took a moment, but then Claire's eyes landed on me. She froze. Her mouth fell open. Mom, she whispered like she was seeing a ghost. Mark turned, face twisted with rage. He spat. What the hell do you think you're doing here? The clerk looked between us, startled. This is your mother? Not anymore, Claire hissed, voice shaking. She's ruining everything. She froze our cards. She's lost her mind. The children stared, wide-eyed. Ethan's lips parted, his voice small. Grandma. I bent slightly toward him, my voice soft but steady. I'm not mad at you, sweetheart. I never could be. Then I straightened and looked at the clerk. I am Janet Whitman, I said clearly. The primary account holder. The one who saved for decades for this family trip. The one who was left off the guest list. The terminal went still. Even the rolling suitcases seemed to pause. The clerk adjusted her glasses. Ma'am, if you are the primary, you can certainly resolve this. Claire lunged forward. Don't listen to her. She's 82. She doesn't even understand what she's doing. Ryan stepped in, flashing his official badge this time. She understands perfectly. I can confirm her authority. The clerk hesitated. Ms. Whitman, do you wish to reinstate the cards for this reservation? I looked at my family, their faces desperate, pleading, furious. Mark's fists clenched. Claire's mascara smudged. Jenna wrung her hands. Luke muttered under his breath like a cornered animal. And then I looked at the children, the only innocents in this storm. Ethan wide-eyed. Sophie biting her lip. Little Max clutching his stuffed whale. I closed my eyes for half a second. I could hear Tom again. Count yourself in. I opened them and said, no. I do not wish to reinstate their cards. But I will be boarding this ship myself. The terminal gasped as though I'd shouted fire. Claire let out a shriek. Mark slammed his fist on the counter. Ethan whispered, Grandma's coming? The clerk stammered. Well, in that case, we may have an open stateroom. And that's when chaos erupted. Mark grabbed my arm, squeezing hard. You can't do this, Mom. You'll regret it. We'll make sure of it. Security guards rushed forward. Claire burst into tears, collapsing against Jenna. The children stared in stunned silence. Ryan leaned close, his voice urgent. Stay calm. You've just pulled the anchor out from under them. The next move is yours. I looked at Mark's hand on my arm, then up into his furious eyes. My son. The boy I had once rocked to sleep during thunderstorms. The boy who had now turned me into his enemy. Take your hand off me, I said quietly. For a moment he didn't move. Then the guard's hand touched his shoulder and Mark let go. His face was stone, his voice low enough that only I heard. If you walk on that ship, you don't have a family anymore. The clerk cleared her throat nervously. Ms. Whitman, do you want to complete your own booking? Every eye in the terminal was on me. My suitcase stood at my feet. The great ship loomed outside the glass, waiting like a giant stage. Yes, I said. Book me in. The clerk's fingers flew across her keyboard. Welcome aboard the Oceanic Majesty, Ms. Whitman. The children gasped. Claire wailed. Mark cursed under his breath. Ryan gave the faintest smile. And as I signed the receipt with my trembling hand, the announcement echoed over the loudspeaker. Final boarding call for oceanic voyages. All passengers, please proceed to the gangway. I took my suitcase handle, turned toward the ship and walked. But as I reached the gangway, I heard Claire's voice rise behind me, shrill and furious. Don't let her on. She's not safe. She's unstable. Someone stop her before she hurts the kids. The security guards froze. The clerk hesitated. The whole crowd seemed to shift toward me like a tide turning. And I realized, this fight was only beginning. The steel ramp of the Oceanic Majesty groaned beneath my feet as I rolled my suitcase up, the cries of my family echoing behind me in the terminal. Stop her! Claire screamed. She's unstable. Mark shouted something about lawyers, his voice raw and ugly. But the guard by the gangway didn't move. Ryan was right beside me, steady as a shadow. He leaned close and whispered, Keep walking, Ms. Whitman. They can't touch you here. So I did. One step, then another. The smell of salt and fuel wrapped around me. Above, the ship's white hull gleamed against the darkening sky, its name painted in proud navy letters. It was bigger up close, so massive it made me feel small and young at the same time. A crew member in a smart uniform checked my boarding slip. Her smile was crisp, professional. Welcome aboard, Ms. Whitman. She didn't blink at my age or at the angry family screaming on the other side of the glass. For her, I was just another passenger. And that felt powerful. I stepped across the threshold. My shoes clicked onto polished deck flooring. For the first time in weeks, I felt steady. Inside, the atrium opened like a cathedral. Golden railings curled upward, chandeliers sparkled, and the sound of a string quartet drifted from somewhere above. People posed for embarkation photos, glasses of champagne in hand. And there I was, an 82-year-old blonde grandma with a suitcase and a fire in her chest. Ryan leaned in. Your stateroom is on deck 6. I'll escort you. But before we could move, I heard the sharp echo of footsteps. Turning, I saw Claire rushing up the gangway, Mark right behind her. Somehow they'd pushed through security. Their faces were wild. Mom. Mark barked. If you don't reverse this right now, we'll. He stopped short. 2 uniformed officers from the ship's own security appeared, blocking their path. One raised a hand. Sir, ma'am, you're not cleared to board without valid payment. Step back. Claire's face twisted. That's our mother. She's manipulating you. She doesn't know what she's doing. The officer didn't budge. Ma'am, please return to the terminal. I met Claire's eyes across the atrium. She looked desperate, furious, humiliated. And for the first time she looked smaller than me. I lifted my chin. I know exactly what I'm doing, I said. My voice carried farther than I meant and heads turned. A hush fell over the atrium. Dozens of passengers were watching, their curiosity sharp as knives. Mark sneered, his voice dripping venom. You're choosing strangers over your own family. I swallowed hard. No, Mark. I'm choosing myself. Something you forgot how to do for me years ago. For a moment, silence. Then the officer motioned them back. Terminal now. His tone brooked no argument. Claire's face crumpled. Mark spat a curse and turned on his heel. I watched them retreat down the gangway, swallowed by the terminal crowd. The atrium erupted in low murmurs. Strangers stared, whispering. Some looked scandalized, others sympathetic. I didn't care. For the first time, I wasn't just the quiet grandmother in the background. I was the headline. Ryan touched my elbow gently. Come on. Let's get you settled. My stateroom was small but lovely. A single bed with a crisp white duvet, a porthole framing the dusky horizon, and a bottle of sparkling water on the desk. I set Tom's photo on the nightstand. His smile seemed to glow in the soft lamplight. I sat on the bed and let my suitcase fall open. My phone buzzed again, dozens of notifications lighting the screen. Voicemails, missed calls, texts. My family's fury spilling out of every bubble. But one stood apart. Another message from Ethan. Grandma, Mom says you hate us now. Is that true? Please tell me it's not. My chest tightened. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes. I hadn't done this to hurt the children. But how could they understand that? They only knew the story their parents were spinning. I typed, then erased. Typed again, erased again. Finally I wrote. I could never hate you, Ethan. This is between the grown-ups. I'll explain one day. Just remember I love you more than anything. I hovered over send, but my thumb froze. Would Claire see it? Would she twist it? A knock sounded at the door. I jumped. Ms. Whitman. Ryan's voice. I opened the door. His face was serious, no trace of his earlier calm. There's something you should know, he said. What now? My voice trembled. They're not leaving quietly. Your son just filed a formal complaint with the ship. He's claiming you're mentally unfit and a danger to yourself. If the captain believes it, he can have you escorted off at the next port. The room swayed around me. My knees weakened. They wouldn't. Ryan nodded grimly. They would. They already are. I gripped the edge of the doorframe, anger and fear colliding in my chest. My own children willing to brand me insane just to get their way. I thought I'd won when I stepped onto this ship. But it was clear now. The battle had just begun. The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through the porthole, casting golden stripes across my stateroom. I hadn't slept much. Every creak of the ship, every faint knock of waves against the hull had set my nerves on edge. Tom's photo on the nightstand was the only thing that kept me grounded. A sharp rap sounded at the door. I jolted upright. Ms. Whitman. A crisp voice. Not Ryan's. Deeper, steadier. I opened the door to find a tall man in a white captain's uniform. His hat gleamed, his expression stern but polite. Two ship officers flanked him. I am Captain Harrison, he said. May we come in? I stepped back, heart pounding. The stateroom suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. He entered with measured steps, glanced at the neatly folded papers on my desk, at the photo of Tom, at my half-open suitcase. Then his eyes met mine. Ms. Whitman, we've received a complaint from your family, he said. His tone was gentle, but it carried weight. They claim you are mentally unfit, and that you froze financial accounts in a state of confusion. The words cut deeper than knives. Mentally unfit. The phrase dripped with betrayal. I clenched my fist. Confusion. Captain, I've been balancing ledgers since before those children were born. I am the primary on those accounts. I froze them because my family booked a $60,000 cruise without so much as inviting me. Do I look confused to you? One of the officers shifted uncomfortably. The captain studied me for a long moment, then asked, Do you have proof of your authority over those accounts? Without hesitation, I pulled my tidy folder from the suitcase. Tabs, labels, everything in order. I opened to the banking section, slid out the cosigner agreements, the primary account statements, the savings fund records. My hands shook, but not from weakness, from fury. Right here, I said. Every document. Every number. I don't make claims without receipts. The captain leafed through the pages carefully. His brow furrowed, then softened. Impressive, he murmured. Not many passengers carry a file like this. I told you, I said, my voice rising. I may be old, but I'm not clueless. I know exactly what I'm doing. Silence stretched. Then he closed the folder gently, placed it back on the desk, and straightened. Ms. Whitman, he said, his voice firm, as far as I can see, you are of perfectly sound mind. This ship has no grounds to remove you. You are a paying passenger and you will remain one. Relief washed over me, so suddenly my knees wobbled. I gripped the bed frame to steady myself. But then his eyes hardened. However, your family is still waiting in the terminal. They're furious. They are threatening legal action, media attention, anything to damage this voyage unless you reinstate their cards. If they persist, it may disrupt the experience for every passenger on board. I sank onto the bed. The words echoed in my head. Damage this voyage. Of course they would. My children weren't done punishing me yet. The captain's tone softened. You have a choice. You can let them back in unfrozen accounts and all. Or, you can hold firm and let them face the consequences of their actions. But know this, they will not go quietly. I looked at Tom's photo. His steady smile seemed to whisper the same words he'd always said. Count yourself in. My voice trembled, but it was clear. Captain, they left me behind. They laughed at me. They said I was too old to have a clue. Well, I've got a clue. And I'm not handing it back. The captain's lips twitched, just the faintest shadow of a smile. He nodded once. Very well. I'll inform them. As he left, I heard Claire's shrill voice echoing faintly from the terminal through the open corridor window. She can't do this to us. She'll regret it. The captain shut the door behind him. Silence fell. I slumped back on the bed, my chest heavy, my heart wild. For the first time the victory felt real but fragile. As I knew my children. They wouldn't stop. And sure enough, my phone buzzed a moment later. A new message from an unknown number. Grandma, the text read, "It's Ethan. Mom took my phone but I borrowed Dad's. Please fix this. Everyone's saying we'll be stranded. I don't want to sleep in an airport. Please, Grandma." Tears blurred my vision. The coal in my chest turned molten. How could I stand strong against my children without breaking the hearts of the only people who still loved me? As I wiped my eyes, the loudspeaker crackled above. Attention passengers. The Oceanic Majesty will depart in 30 minutes. All final clearances must be resolved now. I gripped the phone in one hand, Tom's photo in the other. Outside the porthole, the city lights of Seattle flickered against the twilight. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just fighting my family. I was fighting for my own name, my own dignity, my own place in this world. But if I stood too firm, would I lose Ethan too? The Oceanic Majesty vibrated faintly under my feet, a low hum that told me the ship was alive, ready to move. Out my porthole, the dock lights flickered against the water. A tugboat bobbed nearby, its horn groaning like some impatient beast. I clutched my phone, staring at Ethan's message. Please, Grandma. I don't want to sleep in an airport. Please. My chest ached. Children shouldn't have to beg like that. Their parents should be the ones protecting them, not using them as pawns. But here we were, my own grandchildren caught in a war they didn't start. A knock rattled my door again. I jumped, half expecting it to be Captain Harrison returning with bad news. He said it was Ryan. His face was tense. They're still out there, he said, stepping in. Your son's pacing like a wolf. Your daughter's crying into a phone camera. Pretty sure she's live streaming. They've got reporters sniffing around the terminal already. I rubbed my temples. Reporters? Over what? A grandma saying no. Over money, Ryan said flatly. Over drama. Trust me, the story writes itself. Elderly woman sabotages her family's dream cruise. They're trying to spin it before you can. I laughed bitterly, though it caught in my throat. They said I was too old to have a clue. Now I'm somehow cunning enough to pull off sabotage. Ryan crouched so his eyes met mine. Listen. The gangway closes in 15 minutes. Once it does, they're locked out. That'll be the end of it unless you fold. I stared at Tom's photo on the nightstand. His smile was steady, unshakable. Count yourself in, Janie. But Ethan's message burned in my hand. Please, Grandma. My phone buzzed again. A video this time. I hesitated, then pressed play. It was Claire, mascara streaked, voice trembling, but not from sadness. From fury. She held Ethan by the shoulder, Sophie and Max huddled beside him. Look at them, Mom, she hissed into the camera. Look at your grandchildren. You're the reason they're crying. You did this. Fix it or you'll lose them forever. The kids looked miserable, but I saw it. The quick dart of Ethan's eyes, the way he bit his lip, the way he shifted as if he wanted to pull away but didn't dare. They weren't crying because of me. They were crying because they were trapped between loyalty and manipulation. I set the phone down, my hands shaking with rage. She's using them, I whispered. Ryan's jaw tightened. Yes. And you can't play her game, Ms. Whitman. If you fold now, they'll never respect you again. Ever. The ship's horn blared, long, low, final. My heart jumped. Over the loudspeaker. Final boarding call. The gangway will be removed in 10 minutes. Ryan stood. This is it. Once the gangway lifts, the decision is permanent. I rose slowly, gripping my suitcase handle like a cane. My legs trembled, but not from weakness. From fire. I'm going to the deck, I said. The atrium bustled as I made my way through, passengers streaming toward windows to wave at the city. I stepped onto the open deck, the cold wind whipping my hair. The skyline glittered across the dark water. And there, on the dock below, was my family. They spotted me instantly. Mark's face twisted with rage. He cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "You'll pay for this." Claire sobbed theatrically, clutching Sophie against her side. Luke had his phone raised, recording. Jenna glared up like I was the devil herself. But Ethan, sweet Ethan, looked up at me and mouthed, "Grandma." His eyes were wide, pleading but not hateful. The loudspeaker cracked again. All passengers secure. Gangway retracting. Dockworkers began rolling the steel ramp away from the ship. My family lunged forward, shouting, waving, but security held them back. The children cried out. Mark slammed his fist against the barrier. Claire shrieked my name. I gripped the railing so hard my knuckles ached. The moment was brutal, unbearable. My family, my blood on the dock cut off, seething. My grandchildren crying. And me rising above them on the ship like some queen of ice. The ramp clanged free. The ship rumbled, engines stirring deep. We were leaving. And then chaos. Claire broke free of the guard and ran onto the dock, screaming. Mark followed, shoving past. They were wild, desperate. Ethan was crying now, reaching toward me as if his arms could span the water. "Grandma," he shouted, his small voice cracking. "Don't go." I felt my heart rip in two. My hand flew to my chest. This was it, the price of standing tall. Ryan's voice was firm at my side. "Look away, Ms. Whitman. Don't give them the satisfaction." But I couldn't. My eyes locked with Ethan's, his face streaked with tears. The last thread binding me to that dock was him. The ship's horn roared again. The crowd on deck cheered as we pulled away. Lights shimmered on the water. Seattle began to recede. Claire fell to her knees on the dock, shaking with rage. Mark hurled his phone onto the ground, shattering it. The guards dragged them back. My grandchildren's cries grew faint with distance. I stood frozen, the wind tearing at my hair, my heart shattering and hardening all at once. The oceanic majesty was sailing. I was on board. They were not. But the war wasn't over. Because as the city shrank, my phone buzzed one last time. A new message appeared from an unknown number. "This isn't finished, Mom. If you think you've won, just wait. You've started something you can't control." It was from Mark. And I knew, this battle had just gone to sea. The oceanic majesty cut through the Pacific like a knife, her lights shimmering across the black water. Passengers cheered on the deck, champagne flutes raised, cameras flashing as the Seattle skyline shrank into memory. But I stood apart at the railing, the salt wind stinging my face, Tom's photo pressed to my chest. I'd won, or so it looked. My children were left fuming on the dock. My grandchildren's cries still echoed in my ears. And yet I felt no victory. Only the heavy weight of what had broken between us. My phone buzzed again. Mark's message burned across the screen. "This isn't finished, Mom. You started a war." I should have ignored it. I should have let the ocean swallow those words. But my hands shook with fury. A war? No, I was done being the victim in their battles. A shadow fell across me. Ryan appeared, coat collar turned up against the wind. His expression was unreadable. "They won't stop, will they?" I asked, my voice thin. "No," he said. "Not unless you show them you won't break. But they'll try every trick they know. Guilt. Lies. Maybe worse." I thought of Claire's threat. "You'll never see your grandkids again." That wasn't guilt. That was a blade. "Ms. Whitman," Ryan continued, "the captain wants to meet with you tonight. There are whispers your son has already contacted the media. The story might be on the news by morning." My knees went weak. The news? Over this? Ryan's eyes were steady. "People love a spectacle. Especially one about money and betrayal. But you still hold the truth. You decide how this ends." The captain's quarters were stately, all polished wood and brass. Captain Harrison stood behind his desk, arms folded, eyes sharp. "Ms. Whitman," he said, "your family has filed a second complaint, this time with the Coast Guard. They're alleging financial abuse and emotional manipulation. If this escalates, authorities could meet us at the next port." I staggered back, clutching Tom's photo tighter. Abuse? Me? I saved for them. I trusted them. They left me behind like trash. The captain's gaze softened. "I don't doubt you. But the world listens to the loudest voices first. If you want your truth heard, you need to speak it before they twist it further." Ryan leaned forward. "I have an idea. There's a passenger announcement scheduled for tomorrow's gala. Ms. Whitman could make her case publicly. Address the entire ship." My stomach lurched. Publicly? In front of strangers? Ryan's voice was firm. "You're already the headline. Better they hear it from you than from a news report." The captain gave a slow nod. "The choice is yours, Ms. Whitman. Stay silent and risk being painted the villain. Or speak and reclaim your voice." I looked down at Tom's photo. His steady smile seemed to whisper across the years. "Count yourself in." I lifted my chin. "I'll speak." The next evening, the grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and sequined gowns. Passengers clinked glasses, laughter filling the air. I stood backstage, heart hammering, palms damp. My reflection in the mirror showed an old woman with silver streaks in her blonde hair, wrinkles etched deep, but eyes blazing like fire. Ryan squeezed my shoulder. "You've got this. Just tell them the truth." The captain's voice boomed over the loudspeaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Janet Whitman." Applause rippled as I stepped into the spotlight. My knees shook, but I walked tall, Tom's photo tucked into my palm. I looked out over the sea of faces, hundreds of strangers watching, waiting. I took a deep breath. "My name is Janet Whitman. I am 82 years old. I saved for decades so my family could see the world together. But last week they booked a $60,000 cruise. Without me. They said I was too old to have a clue. Too old to matter." A murmur swept the crowd. I held up my folder, papers neatly bound. I froze the accounts because they weren't theirs to spend. They were mine, earned penny by penny, year by year. I didn't do it to punish my grandchildren. I did it to remind my children that family is not about using each other. It's about honoring each other. My voice cracked, but I pressed on. "If that makes me cruel, then so be it. But I will not be erased. Not by strangers, and certainly not by my own blood." Silence. Then applause. It started small, then swelled until the room echoed with it. People stood clapping, nodding, some even cheering. Tears blurred my vision. For the first time in years I felt seen. But as I stepped off the stage, my phone buzzed again. A photo message. It was Ethan. His small face, pale and sad, pressed against an airport bench. His words beneath the photo. "Grandma, I believe you. But I miss you. Please come back." The coal in my chest cracked wide open. Applause still thundered behind me, but all I could see was my grandson, caught between two worlds, begging for me in one I couldn't reach. I sank into a chair, my hands trembling, my heart torn. I'd finally stood tall, finally counted myself in. But in the process, had I lost the one person who still truly saw me? The ship sailed on into the night, and I realized, battles can be won, reputations can be saved, but the war of family is never over. And for me it was only just beginning. The applause from the ballroom still rang in my ears as I sat alone on the promenade deck, the ocean stretching black and endless beneath the stars. The ship hummed steady, but inside me nothing felt steady at all. I had spoken my truth. I had reclaimed my dignity. Passengers had cheered. Strangers saw me as strong, even heroic. And yet, Ethan's face haunted me. That message, "I believe you, but I miss you. Please come back," was a knife that twisted deeper with every heartbeat. The night air was sharp against my skin. My blonde hair, loosed from its bun, whipped across my face. I whispered into the wind, "Tom, what do I do now?" Of course, the waves gave no answer. The next morning, Ryan met me at breakfast. His plate was untouched, coffee steaming between us. "You should know," he said, his voice low. "Your family went on local television last night. They painted you as unstable, selfish, vindictive. Mark said you're suffering from dementia." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Dementia? They'd stoop that low. Ryan's eyes were steady. They already have. My chest burned. And Ethan? Sophie? Max? What about them? He hesitated. The kids were on camera too. Sitting on the couch between their parents wearing those same shirts. They looked coached. Nervous. My appetite vanished. The eggs on my plate blurred into nothing. I pressed my palms flat on the table. Ryan, I can fight lies. I can fight lawyers. But I don't know if I can fight my own children poisoning their children against me. He leaned in. Then maybe you don't fight. Maybe you change the field. Tell your story where the world can't twist it. I frowned. What do you mean? The ship docks in Juneau tomorrow, he said. Media will be waiting. If you want, Oceanic can arrange a press conference on board. You could speak directly. Not as a villain in their script, but as yourself. My stomach turned. A press conference? Me? I'm just a grandmother. No, Ryan said firmly. You're the woman who froze $60,000 with a steady hand. You're the woman who stood on stage and made strangers cheer. You're more than a grandmother, you're a storm. And storms don't stay quiet. I stared at him, torn between fear and fire. Could I really put my family's betrayal out for the world to see? Would it save my grandchildren, or push them further away? That afternoon I walked the deck, my mind a whirlpool. Passengers I'd never met smiled at me, whispered as I passed. One woman touched my arm and said softly, "Good for you. Families think they can walk all over us when we're old. You showed them." Her words should have comforted me. Instead they left me hollow. Vindication from strangers was one thing. Love from Ethan was another. At sunset I found myself in the ship's chapel. Empty pews, candles flickering, the faint smell of salt and incense. I knelt, clutching Tom's photo, my heart heavy. "Give me strength," I whispered. "Not just to fight, but to know what's worth fighting for." The door creaked open behind me. A small voice whispered, "Grandma?" I spun around, my heart leaping. But it wasn't Ethan. It was a boy about his age, a passenger, smiling shyly before scampering off. I sank back, tears streaming. The ache of missing my grandchildren was unbearable. That night the captain called me to his quarters again. His expression was grave. "Ms. Whitman, your children have filed an emergency petition with the Coast Guard. They're requesting intervention at Juneau, claiming you're endangering your family's welfare. If the petition is accepted, they could board and confront you directly." My breath caught. Board the ship? After everything? "Yes," the captain said. "And if that happens, this vessel becomes a battlefield. Passengers, crew, media, everyone will be watching. You need to be ready." I gripped the edge of his desk, my knees trembling. Ready for what? His eyes were steady. "For the storm that's coming." As I walked back to my cabin, the ship groaned against rising waves, as if the sea itself knew a reckoning was near. I looked out the porthole. The horizon was dark, storm clouds gathering in the distance, lightning flickering far off like warning beacons. The oceanic majesty surged forward into the night, carrying me straight toward the storm, toward Juneau, toward my family, toward a battle that could shatter us forever. And for the first time I wondered, was I strong enough to win? The oceanic majesty sliced through slate-gray waters, her decks alive with chatter and the clink of champagne glasses. But beneath the glamour, tension pulsed. Everyone seemed to know something was brewing. Passengers eyed me curiously, whispers following like shadows. By dawn, Juneau's rugged mountains loomed in the mist. The harbor buzzed with seaplanes and fishing boats, but it wasn't the scenery that knotted my stomach. It was the line of vans idling on the dock. Media crews, police and Coast Guard officers in crisp uniforms. Ryan stood beside me at the railing, jaw tight. "They came. Your children filed that petition. The authorities want to hear both sides before deciding anything." I clutched Tom's photo until the frame pressed marks into my palm. "Both sides," I muttered. As if lying and stealing counts as a side. Ryan's eyes softened. "They'll spin their story. You need to stand firm and tell yours. Straight. Clear. No apologies." The gangway dropped and Juneau's cold air rushed aboard. Cameras flashed instantly, reporters shouting questions. "Ms. Whitman, why freeze your family's cards? Are you suffering from dementia? Is this financial abuse or justified revenge?" My knees nearly buckled, but I forced my back straight. 82 years old, blonde hair pinned neat, blue coat buttoned to the chin. I would not shrink. Captain Harrison appeared, his white uniform gleaming. "This will be handled in the observation lounge," he said. "Passengers, media and all concerned parties will attend. Neutral ground." Neutral ground? It felt more like an arena. The lounge filled quickly, chandeliers blazing, windows framing mountains dusted in snow. A long table stretched across the front. On one side me, just me with my folder of documents and Tom's photo. On the other my children. Mark stiff in a suit, Claire in dramatic black, Luke and Jenna flanking them like bodyguards. And behind them the grandchildren, small and wide-eyed, caught in the storm. Gasps rippled through the room when people realized the villain grandma was just a tiny old woman clutching a folder. A Coast Guard officer cleared his throat. "We're here to determine whether Ms. Janet Whitman acted within her rights or if her actions constitute abuse." Mark shot up instantly, voice booming. "She's delusional. She sabotaged our family trip, stranded her grandchildren and embarrassed us publicly. She doesn't even know what she's doing. Look at her age." Claire's voice cracked like glass. "She's vindictive. She hates us. She wants control over everything. She's unstable." I sat still, my heart a drum. Then slowly I rose. "My name is Janet Whitman," I began. "I am 82 years old. And I am not delusional. I am not unstable. I am a mother, a widow, and the one who saved every penny for that so-called family trip. My children booked it without me. They said I was too old to have a clue. They stole my dream and thought I wouldn't notice." Gasps. Murmurs. Cameras clicked like gunfire. I held up my folder, hands steady. "These are the accounts. My name, my signatures, my savings." I froze. What was mine? Not theirs. Mine. The officer leaned forward, examining the documents I slid across the table. His brows rose. "She's primary on every account listed. Authorized co-signers, but no sole ownership by the children." Mark's face flushed crimson. Claire sputtered. "But she doesn't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut in, my voice sharp. "I understand betrayal. I understand manipulation. And I understand using children as shields. You held up Ethan, Sophie, and Max like props on a stage, telling me I'd lose them if I didn't cave. That is abuse. Not what I did." The room erupted. Reporters shouting, passengers murmuring approval. Some even clapped. Claire's mascara streaked as she screeched, "You'll die alone, mother. And it'll be your fault." For a moment, silence. Then Ethan's small voice pierced it all. "Stop." Every head turned. My grandson stood trembling, fists clenched. "Stop yelling at Grandma. She's not crazy. She just wanted to come with us. You left her out." Claire whirled, horrified. "Ethan, sit down." But he didn't. Tears streaked his cheeks as he turned to me. "Grandma, I miss you. I don't care about cruises. I just want you." My knees buckled. Ryan caught my arm before I collapsed. Gasps swirled through the lounge. The Coast Guard officer banged the table. "Enough. This is clear. Ms. Whitman acted within her legal rights. She is competent and the accounts are hers to control. The complaint is dismissed." Cheers broke out from the passengers in the back. Cameras flashed. Mark cursed under his breath, Claire sobbed, Jenna and Luke shrank in their seats. But I didn't see them anymore. I only saw Ethan, standing small but brave, his eyes locked on mine. I opened my arms. He ran across the lounge straight into me. I clutched him tight, sobbing into his hair. "I'll never stop loving you," I whispered. "Never." The room blurred with noise, but inside that hug, there was only silence, pure aching silence. Later, as the oceanic majesty pulled away from Juneau, the mountains fading behind us, I stood at the railing again. Ryan beside me. Ethan at my side, hand clasped in mine. "Storms passed," Ryan said softly. I shook my head. "No. Storms never really pass with family. They just circle back. But for now," I squeezed Ethan's hand, "for now I'm not alone." The waves glittered under the fading sun. Somewhere above, I imagined Tom's voice carried on the wind. "Count yourself in, Janie." And for the first time I truly had.